In early 1945, before the final year of World War II reached its devastating climax, tension rippled through the vast United States air bases scattered across the Mariana Islands. It was the kind of tension that settles in the air before an enormous storm, heavy and expectant. A group of United States Army Air Forces crews moved across dimly lit runways as engineers and armorers prepared the massive B-29 Superfortress fleet for a mission unlike any they had attempted before. Air warfare was evolving, and the United States command believed that this new approach could alter the very direction of the Pacific War. Traditional high-altitude precision bombing had failed against Japan. Strong jet stream winds scattered bomb patterns, narrow industrial targets were missed, and vital war industries hidden within residential districts continued to function. Analysts pored over reconnaissance photographs and grim after-action reports that revealed disappointing results. Something needed to change. That change arrived in the form of incendiary warfare. Scientists and engineers at the Standard Oil Development Company had refined a new incendiary weapon, the M69 bomblet, which carried a jellied gasoline compound capable of burning at extraordinary temperatures. Early tests conducted at the Dugway Proving Ground showed that these incendiaries could ignite wood-framed structures with terrifying efficiency. United States planners knew that Japanese cities were built of wood and paper. They also knew that narrow streets and dense urban blocks created a perfect environment for a firestorm. The question was no longer whether incendiary bombing would be effective. The question was whether the United States was willing to unleash it on a scale never before seen in aviation history. As America joined this new phase of air strategy, General Curtis LeMay studied the failures of previous raids and crafted a radical solution. Instead of soaring at high altitude, the B-29 force would drop to low altitude at night, sweeping over Tokyo with their bomb bay doors crammed with clusters of M69 incendiaries. The goal was to turn precision bombing into area destruction and to strike at the heart of Japan's war-making capacity. On the night of March 9, more than 300 B-29 aircraft prepared to lift off from Saipan, Tinian, and Guam. The crews knew that they were about to ignite one of the most destructive operations in the history of air warfare. The world was about to witness the beginning of Operation Meetinghouse. In early 1945, as the United States prepared for Operation Meetinghouse, the B-29 Superfortress stood at the center of the strategy. Before the raid on Tokyo, American forces had relied heavily on this enormous aircraft, a technological marvel born from an unprecedented industrial effort. The B-29 was engineered for long-range, high-altitude strategic bombing, with pressurized cabins, remote-controlled gun turrets, and engines powerful enough to push the aircraft across the vast Pacific. It represented a new era of air power and a massive commitment from American industry. Tens of thousands of workers at Boeing, Bell, and Martin factories labored day and night to deliver these aircraft, supported by a supply chain that stretched across the continental United States. Despite early mechanical issues, particularly with its Wright R2000 double cyclone engines, the B-29 matured into a formidable weapon system by 1945. Its ability to carry heavy bomb loads over immense distances made it the perfect aircraft for the growing American air offensive against Japan. While the United States was ascending into the realm of high-technology warfare, Japan's home island defenses were crumbling under immense pressure. Japan's air defense network, once considered formidable, had become fragmented and under-resourced. Fuel shortages crippled pilot training. Radar coverage struggled to detect incoming formations at night. Many fighter aircraft were outdated, and the few that remained serviceable were often grounded due to a lack of spare parts and aviation gasoline. Anti-aircraft guns, though present in significant numbers, suffered from outdated fire control systems and limited ammunition supplies. Japan had also lost most of its experienced pilots in the battles of 1940 to through 1944, leaving its skies defended by undertrained crews who could not effectively engage the B-29 fleet. By the time the night of March 9 arrived, Japan was vulnerable in ways that few outside its high command fully understood. The high-altitude approach of earlier raids had allowed Japanese defenders occasional success, but the low-altitude nighttime strategy planned for Operation Meetinghouse would render much of their defense infrastructure ineffective. Air raid sirens, civil defense drills, and bucket brigades offered little protection against a mass incendiary attack on a city built from wood and bamboo. As the B-29 aircrews prepared for what would become the most destructive single air raid of the Second World War, Tokyo's defensive reality was clear. The city stood exposed. In early 1945, before the full devastation of incendiary warfare unfolded over Japan, American planners were locked in intense debate about how best to attack a nation whose war industries were woven directly into its cities. The strategic logic behind incendiary warfare had emerged slowly, shaped by scientific testing, battlefield necessity, and the hard lessons of earlier failed raids. Before the United States committed to this approach, researchers at the National Defense Research Committee and the Standard Oil Development Company conducted meticulous experiments with new incendiary devices, particularly the M69 bomblet. These tests, carried out at the Dugway Proving Ground, used full-scale mock-ups of Japanese homes. The results were unmistakable: wood-framed walls, sliding paper doors, and tar-coated roofs ignited with alarming speed. Scientists observed how a single M69 bomblet, once its fuse activated, expelled burning jellied gasoline that clung to surfaces and spread fire with relentless intensity. Air warfare was evolving, and these findings became the cornerstone of a new American strategy. Intelligence officers studied Japan's urban layout, discovering that residential districts housed countless cottage industries. Women and elderly workers crafted aircraft parts, munitions components, and intricate electrical assemblies in their homes. Traditional precision bombing could not locate or destroy these dispersed workshops, but incendiary attacks on entire districts could. Research analysts mapped Tokyo with extraordinary detail, identifying the Shitamachi Low City region as a prime target. Its dense wooden housing blocks, narrow streets, and high population density made it tragically vulnerable to a firestorm. Meteorologists joined the planning as well, studying seasonal winds, humidity levels, and the likelihood of creating a self-feeding inferno. They determined that a dry night with a steady breeze would allow individual fires to merge into a single overwhelming blaze. General Curtis LeMay and his staff believed that striking such districts would cripple Japan's war production, disrupt supply lines, and break the industrial momentum that had sustained the conflict. Every factor pointed toward the effectiveness of incendiary warfare. In March 1945, with the Pacific Campaign reaching its most desperate stage, the United States command embraced this tactic fully. The plan was not simply to damage Tokyo, it was to ignite it in a way that would force the Japanese command to confront the devastating consequences of a prolonged war. As the B-29 crews prepared their bomb racks with thousands of M69 bomblets, the logic behind the coming inferno had already been written by science, strategy, and the unyielding pressures of total war. How in the late hours of March 9, 1945, as darkness settled over Tokyo, the people of the city could not have imagined the scale of destruction that was about to descend upon them. In the early minutes before midnight, the first wave of B-29 Superfortress aircraft from the Marianas crossed the coastline at low altitude. Air warfare was evolving, and this mission marked a radical shift in American strategy. General Curtis LeMay had ordered the bombers to strip away most defensive guns and ammunition to increase bomb load capacity. The aircraft flew barely above 2,000 feet, guided only by the glow of scattered fires and the distant outline of Tokyo Bay. It was a dangerous tactic, but one that would unleash unprecedented devastation. The lead Pathfinder aircraft released magnesium marker flares that fell slowly, illuminating the Shitamachi district below. This region, filled with dense wooden housing and narrow, winding streets, had been identified by intelligence analysts as the most vulnerable target in the city. Moments later, the main bomber stream arrived. Bay doors opened and tens of thousands of M69 incendiary bomblets cascaded downward like a deadly metallic rain. Each bomblet struck rooftops, burrowed into homes, and erupted in bursts of jellied gasoline that clung to everything it touched. Within minutes, hundreds of separate fires ignited across the district. As more waves of B-29 aircraft followed, the isolated fires began to merge. Winds rising from the burning neighborhoods intensified the flames, creating a growing firestorm. Temperatures soared beyond what most residents had ever experienced. Entire blocks were engulfed. Firefighters struggled against impossible conditions. Their water hoses hissed and evaporated in the heat. Civilians fled through the streets, only to find themselves trapped by walls of flame and choking smoke. Historic temples, schools, workshops, and homes that had stood for generations were consumed in minutes. The Japanese air defenses tried desperately to respond, but their limited night fighters and weakened anti-aircraft batteries could do little against the low-flying American formations. By the early morning of March 10, much of Tokyo's eastern districts had become a smoldering landscape of ashes, twisted metal, and charred ruins. When the sun rose, survivors emerged to witness a scene beyond imagination. More than 100,000 people had perished, making Operation Meetinghouse the most destructive single air raid in recorded history. It was a moment that reshaped the final months of the Second World War. It demonstrated the terrifying power of incendiary warfare.